High Admiral Zeichtel's crystalline antennae flickered with agitation as emergency alerts flooded the Galactic Confederation's Central Command. The massive view screen before him displayed what should have been impossible. A vessel of unmistakably human design had just torn through the fabric of space-time, emerging from an uncharted quantum corridor directly into the heart of protected Confederation territory. "Status report," Zeichtel demanded, his multifaceted eyes scanning the stream of data flowing through his neural interface. The bridge crew, composed of various species from across the Confederation, worked frantically at their stations. First Officer Mira, a cerebral from the Andromeda arm, her translucent brain matter pulsing with neural activity, responded first. The vessel identifies itself as HMS Hyperion, human warship classification, Titan-class destroyer. Energy readings are unprecedented, Admiral. Their quantum drive signature doesn't match anything in our database. The ship hanging in space before them was a study in elegant brutality. Unlike the organic curves and crystalline structures favored by Confederation designers, the Hyperion was all sharp angles and armored plates, its midnight black hull absorbing, rather than reflecting the light of nearby stars. The only spots of color were the pulsing blue lines of its energy conduits and the stark white letters identifying it as a vessel of the Human Space Command. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported Communications Officer Vex, their tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. "Audio and visual." "Put it through," Zeichtel ordered, straightening his ceremonial carapace. The view screen shifted, revealing a human female with close-cropped black hair and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of distant stars. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the HMS Hyperion to Confederation Central Command. We come with urgent news and a warning. Request immediate audience with your highest authority. This is not a drill. Authentication code: Sierra 0793. Zeichtel's antennae twitched. The authentication code was valid, a remnant from the last human Confederation war, meant to be used only in cases of galaxy-threatening emergencies. But that war had ended centuries ago, with humans agreeing to remain within their designated sectors of space. "Commander Chen," Zeichtel responded, his translator converting his crystalline harmonics into standard human English. "You're in violation of 17 different space treaties. Your presence here alone could restart a war that ended 300 years ago. What could possibly justify this risk?" The human commander's expression remained steady, but Zeichtel's empathic sensors detected a spike of genuine fear, something he'd never expected to sense from a human. Their species was infamous for facing down death with what other races considered inappropriate levels of humor or defiance. "They're coming back, Admiral," Chen said, her voice carrying the kind of certainty that made Zeichtel's primary heart skip a beat. "The Void Hunters. We found their advanced scouts at the edge of human space. The old nightmares are waking up." The bridge fell silent. Even the youngest cadets knew the stories of the Void Hunters, the ancient race that had nearly wiped out all sentient life in the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing 50,000 years ago. The race that had forced the first alliance between humans and the Confederation before old fears and prejudices tore that alliance apart. "That's impossible," First Officer Mira interjected, her brain matter now pulsing an alarmed shade of purple. "Our quantum arrays monitor all approaches to both human and Confederation space. Nothing cooled." "They don't use normal space," Chen interrupted, tapping something on her console. New data began streaming into the Confederation systems. They found a way to travel through what we call null space, a dimension that exists between the quantum corridors. That's how we detected them. The Hyperion is equipped with experimental sensors designed to detect null space ruptures. 3 days ago, we recorded this. The view screen filled with readings that made Zeichtel's scientific training scream in protest. The laws of physics themselves seemed to bend and break in the data before him. And there, in the chaos of impossible numbers, was a pattern he'd seen only in ancient historical records. The unique signature of Void Hunter vessels. If they're truly returning, Zeichel said carefully, why come here? Why risk war by violating our space? Commander Chen's expression softened slightly, though her posture remained military rigid. Because last time, Admiral, it took both our peoples working together to drive them back. And this time, they're not just sending hunter-killer squadrons. This time, they're bringing their entire civilization through the null space rifts. We have less than a week before the first wave arrives. Zeichel felt his crystalline form vibrate with ancient instincts. The human was telling the truth, or at least believed she was. And if she was right, maintain your position. Hyperion, he ordered. I need to convene the emergency council. And Commander Chen, if you're wrong about this, there won't be enough left of human space to start another war. The human's lips curved in what Zeichel's cultural database identified as a grim smile. With respect, Admiral, if I'm wrong, none of us will be alive long enough to worry about war. As the transmission ended, Zeichel turned to his crew. Begin emergency protocols, and someone wake up the ancestral archives. If the Void Hunters are truly returning, we'll need every scrap of knowledge our ancestors left behind. He paused, his antennae dimming slightly. And prepare my diplomatic quarters. Something tells me I'm about to host a human warship commander for the first time in 3 centuries. The massive engines of the Hyperion pulsed quietly in the void, while throughout Confederation space, ancient warning systems began to wake up, recognizing patterns they hadn't detected in 50,000 years. The game of survival was about to begin again. And this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The Grand Chamber of the Confederation Council hummed with tension as representatives from 1,000 worlds argued in 300 different languages. The neural translators struggled to keep up with the cascade of urgent voices, creating a strange harmony of fear and outrage. At the center of the storm stood Commander Sarah Chen, her Black Human Space Command uniform a stark contrast to the colorful array of beings surrounding her. You expect us to believe, rumbled Council Elder Angsthar, his gaseous form swirling with skepticism, that your people developed null space detection technology without our knowledge. Technology that supposedly discovered a threat no one else has seen in 50 millennia. Chen activated a holographic projector on her wrist. Above the council floor, a 3-dimensional image materialized, a massive tear in the fabric of reality, its edges crackling with impossible energies. Through the rift, dark shapes moved with terrible purpose. With respect, Elder, Chen's voice carried across the chamber. We didn't develop this technology. We inherited it. She paused, knowing her next words would cause chaos. From the predecessors. The chamber erupted. The predecessors, the mysterious species that had vanished from the galaxy even before the time of the Void Hunters, leaving behind only fragments of their hyper-advanced technology. Technology that both humans and the Confederation had agreed was too dangerous to study. High Admiral Zeichel stepped forward, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights. Explain yourself, Commander. Access to predecessor artifacts is forbidden by the Treaty of Arcturus. The treaty, Chen said carefully, forbids actively seeking out or excavating predecessor technology. What we found us. She tapped her projector again, and the image changed to show a massive structure floating in deep space. 3 years ago, this appeared in the TAS CD system, a predecessor sensor array designed specifically to detect null space incursions. It activated automatically when it sensed the first Void Hunter scouts. First Officer Mira, her brain matter now a troubled shade of orange, floated forward. Why were we not informed immediately? Because the array came with a warning, Chen replied, her expression grim. The predecessors didn't just vanish, they were running from something. The Void Hunters weren't just another aggressive species, they were weapons, created by the predecessors to fight something even worse. But the weapons turned on their creators, and in their desperation to survive, the predecessors sealed the Void Hunters in null space, a seal that's now breaking down. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Elder Anxthar's gaseous form condensed with shock. If what you say is true, why did the predecessors not simply destroy these weapons? Because they couldn't, Chen answered. The Void Hunters were designed to be perfect warriors, constantly evolving, learning from every defeat. The more the predecessors fought them, the stronger they became. That's why we need to work together. Not just humans and the Confederation, every spacefaring race. Because if we fight them separately, we'll only make them stronger. High Admiral Zeichtel's antennae flickered with rapid calculations. You said we have less than a week. What exactly happens then? Chen's hologram shifted again, showing a map of the galaxy with dozens of red points pulsing in sync. These are the null space ruptures we've detected. In 6 days, they'll reach critical mass. The Void Hunters will pour through in force, using the same dimensional corridors the predecessors used to seal them away. They've had 50,000 years to prepare, Admiral. They won't make the same mistakes they made last time. And humanity? Asked Mira. Your species wasn't even spacefaring during the last invasion. What can you offer besides warnings? A slight smile crossed Chen's face, the kind of smile that had made other species learn to fear human ingenuity. We've spent the last 3 years preparing. The Hyperion isn't just a warship, it's a prototype. Its hull is lined with null space responsive materials, allowing it to detect and potentially disrupt their dimensional transitions. We've developed weapons designed to target their evolutionary capabilities, forcing them to fight without adapting. And most importantly, she paused, making eye contact with each council member. We've learned how to track them through null space itself. The implications weren't lost on anyone. Humanity, the youngest spacefaring race, had taken forbidden technology, and instead of using it for conquest, had prepared for a war they knew would come. A war they knew they couldn't win alone. The last time our peoples fought together, Zeichtel said softly, it ended in mistrust and isolation. How can we be sure this crisis won't end the same way? Chen's response was interrupted by a sudden blaring of alarms. The chamber's main display lit up with urgent readings from the outer defense perimeter. First Officer Mira's brain matter pulsed rapidly as she processed the data. Multiple null space ruptures detected, she announced, her usually calm voice tinged with fear. They're not waiting for the week to end. They're coming now. Commander Chen was already moving, her comm unit active. Hyperion, battle stations, all crews to emergency positions. She turned to the council, her eyes hard with determination. We can continue this debate, or we can fight, but we need to decide now. The Void Hunters remember their last defeat. They won't give us time to unite against them again. High Admiral Zeichtel looked at the tactical displays, watching as more ruptures appeared throughout Confederation space. The time for diplomacy was over. Now they would see if humanity's preparations were enough to face the nightmare that had haunted the galaxy for 50 millennia. The ancient enemies had returned, and the only question that remained was whether the combined might of humanity and the Confederation would be enough to stop them, or if their differences would doom them all. Reality itself seemed to tear apart as the first Void Hunter vessels emerged from null space. They were living darkness given form, crystalline structures that absorbed light rather than reflecting it, surrounded by fields of twisting energy that hurt the eye to look upon. The Confederation Defense Fleet, hastily assembled around the Council Station, faced an enemy that defied their understanding of physics itself. Commander Chen stood on the Hyperion's bridge, watching tactical displays light up with impossible readings. Multiple contacts, dimensional transition complete. Counting 70. No, 80+ hostile vessels. Energy signatures match historical records of Void Hunter attack craft. High Admiral Zeichtel's voice came through the command channel, his crystalline harmonics tight with tension. Confederation fleet reporting ready, Commander. Though I must admit, our weapons seem rather primitive compared to what we're facing. Numbers don't win battles, Admiral, Chen replied, her fingers dancing across the tactical interface. Hyperion actual to all ships. Implement pattern Omega. Let's show them what we've learned in the last 50,000 years. The human warship moved with impossible grace for its size, its experimental drive systems allowing it to slide through space in ways that made the Confederation tactical officers questioning their sensors. The Void Hunters responded immediately, their ships flowing like liquid shadow toward the Hyperion. "They're already adapting to our drive signature," reported Lieutenant Park from his station. "Evolutionary algorithms engaging at twice the predicted rate." Chen allowed herself a grim smile. "Good. They're focusing on us." "Admiral Zeichtel, Phase 1 is go. Show them what your people can do." The Confederation fleet, which had been holding position in a seemingly random formation, suddenly activated synchronized quantum fields. The space around them warped, creating a complex geometric pattern that the ancient records had called a resonance trap. The Void Hunters found their adaptive abilities temporarily disrupted by the quantum interference. "Phase 2. Execute," Chen ordered. The Hyperion's main weapon powered up, not a traditional energy weapon, but something far stranger. Beams of coherent reality itself lanced out from the ship, cutting through the Void Hunters' dimensional shields like they weren't there. By the first light, Zeichtel breathed, watching as the supposedly invincible enemy vessels were torn apart. "What kind of weapon is that?" "We call it a causality lance," Chen explained, even as she ordered another volley. "It doesn't just attack their ships, it attacks their timeline, disrupting their ability to evolve and adapt. But we can't maintain this for long. Your turn, Admiral." The Confederation fleet moved in perfect synchronization, their combined firepower focusing on the temporarily vulnerable Void Hunters. Space itself seemed to burn as ancient enemies clashed with new technologies, neither side willing to give ground. But the Void Hunters hadn't spent 50 millennia idle. From the largest of their ships came a pulse of null space energy that made every organic being in the fleet cry out in pain. Reality buckled, and new forms began emerging from the dimensional tiers. Things that had once been starships but had evolved far beyond their original purpose. Multiple hull breaches, Lieutenant Park shouted as the Hyperion shuddered under a barrage of weapons that seemed to ignore their shields entirely. "They're adapting to the causality lance." Chen gripped her command chair as the ship rocked again. "All power to the null space buffers. We can't let them establish a stable bridgehead in normal space." Through the chaos of battle, First Officer Mira's voice cut through the command channel. "Commander, Admiral, our quantum arrays are detecting something else coming through the rifts. Something bigger." The tactical display shifted to show a massive shape emerging from the largest null space tear, a vessel that dwarfed even the Confederation's largest dreadnoughts. Its surface rippled with patterns that made observers' minds recoil, and its very presence seemed to distort the laws of physics. "That's their command ship," Chen said, her voice tight. "The same class of vessel that led the original invasion. If it fully materializes in our space, the station's defensive grid is failing." Came a panicked report from the council chambers. "Void Hunter boarding parties are bypassing our shields." High Admiral Zeichtel's next words carried the weight of centuries of military tradition. "Commander Chen, the Confederation formally requests immediate tactical command integration. Our fleet is yours to command." Chen nodded grimly. "Hyperion Actual to all ships. Implement Emergency Protocol Prometheus. Admiral, have your ships form up on us. If we can't stop that command ship from fully transitioning, none of our other victories will matter." The combined human and Confederation fleet began moving as one, executing battle plans that had been theoretical until this moment. The Void Hunters responded with strategies that had helped them nearly conquer the galaxy once before, their ships evolving new weapons and defenses with each passing second. But this time, they faced an enemy that had spent centuries preparing for their return. Humanity's unconventional tactics paired with Confederation precision created a symphony of destruction that even the Void Hunters' adaptive capabilities struggled to counter. As the battle reached its crescendo, Commander Chen watched the massive enemy command ship slowly pushing its way into normal space. They had minutes at most before it fully materialized. Everything they'd prepared for, everything they'd sacrificed, would come down to the next few moments. All ships, she broadcast on all frequencies, prepare for maximum null space exposure. We're going to show these ancient nightmares why you should never give humanity time to prepare for a rematch. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as the combined fleet prepared for what could be their final attack against an enemy that had haunted the galaxy's dreams for 50,000 years. The Hyperion's bridge was filled with an unlikely mix of humans and Confederation officers, all working in desperate harmony as alerts blared and systems reported critical damage. Commander Chen stood at the tactical display, watching as the massive Void Hunter command ship continued its inexorable emergence into normal space. "Main weapons are down," Lieutenant Park reported, his console sparking. "Null space buffers at 12% and failing. We can't take another hit like that." Beside him, a Confederation quantum specialist named Arkstil, their crystalline form pulsing with calculations, added, "Their evolutionary algorithms are operating at unprecedented levels. They're adapting to our combined tactics faster than predicted." Chen watched as another Confederation cruiser disappeared in a blast of null space energy, its crew's final transmissions cut short by dimensional distortion. They were losing ships too quickly, and the enemy command vessel was now more than 60% materialized in normal space. "Status of the Council Station," she demanded. First Officer Mira's holographic form flickered as she reported from the station's command center. "Void Hunter boarding parties are pushing through our defenses. They're changing as they fight, Commander. Learning from every engagement, our security teams can't keep up with the tactical shifts." Chen's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. Something about the enemy's attack pattern was bothering her, a familiar rhythm she couldn't quite place. Then it hit her. "They're playing chess," she muttered. High Admiral Zeichel, who had been coordinating fleet movements, turned his crystalline head toward her. "Commander, look at their formation," Chen explained, highlighting patterns on the display. "They're treating this like a strategic board game, moving pieces methodically, sacrificing units for positional advantage. They'd spent 50,000 years analyzing our historical battle records, learning how we think and fight." A slight smile crossed her face. "But they're fighting the last war." She opened a channel to all ships. "This is Commander Chen. All vessels switch to tactical pattern Echo 7 immediately. And someone get me Dr. Peddle from engineering." The comm crackled as a harried voice responded. "Patil here, Commander. Bit busy trying to keep the null space buffers from imploding. Doctor, remember that crazy idea you had during game night last month? The one about using the quantum drive as a dimensional resonator?" There was a pause. "The tea experiment. Commander, that was theoretical. We were half drunk on Centaurian brandy when... Can you do it?" Another pause. "Maybe. But we'd need a massive amount of energy focused through a quantum crystalline matrix to create the resonance effect. And even then..." "High Admiral," Chen turned to Zeichel, "your crystalline form. It's naturally quantum resonant, correct?" The Admiral's antennae twitched as he understood. "You want to use my people as living quantum amplifiers. The energy required would be less than what we'll need if that command ship fully materializes," Chen finished. "Dr. Patel, prepare the drive system for recursive quantum charging. Admiral, I need every crystalline being in the fleet ready to channel energy on my mark." As the orders went out, Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Park, plot us a course directly through the enemy formation, right down their center line." "Ma'am." Park's eyes widened. "That's suicide. Their adaptive algorithms We'll be too busy trying to counter our previous strategies," Chen interrupted. "Sometimes the best move in chess is to flip the board." She opened a channel to the station. "First Officer Mira, I need you to prepare the station's quantum arrays for something unusual." "Define unusual," Mira replied, her brain matter pulsing skeptically. "We're going to make tea." There was a long pause. "Commander, I fail to see how human beverages are relevant to our tactical situation. Chen smiled as she watched the fleet reposition itself. Tea is just hot leaf juice until you add energy to it in the right way. We're going to do the same thing to space itself. Trust me. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as the combined fleet executed Chen's unorthodox plan. The Hyperion's quantum drive began to hum at frequencies that made non-humans deeply uncomfortable. Crystalline crew members throughout the fleet prepared themselves to channel unprecedented amounts of energy. Void Hunter command ship at 85% materialization, Arkstil reported. Their weapon systems are coming online. Now would be good, Commander, Admiral Zyktal added, his form already beginning to resonate with gathered energy. Chen took a deep breath. All ships, execute pattern Echo 7. Dr. Patel, initiate quantum resonance on my mark. She watched as the massive enemy vessel loomed before them, its impossible geometries threatening to overwhelm their sensors. Remember, she broadcast to the fleet, in chess, the queen may be the most powerful piece, but it's still just a piece, and sometimes you need to change the game entirely. She gripped her command chair. All ships, punch it. The combined fleet surged forward as one, driving straight toward the heart of the Void Hunter formation. At the same time, every crystalline being in the fleet began channeling energy through their natural quantum matrices, creating a cascade effect that Dr. Patel had once compared to stirring tea at the speed of light. Space itself began to vibrate as the Hyperion's modified quantum drive added its power to the mix. The Void Hunters, their adaptive algorithms still trying to counter the fleet's previous tactics, found themselves facing something entirely new. A weapon that didn't attack them directly, but rather changed the fundamental rules of space around them. Energy cascade reaching critical levels, Dr. Puddle reported, his voice strained. Whatever you're going to do, Commander, do it now. Chen's eyes locked onto the massive form of the enemy command ship, now stuttering between dimensions as the quantum resonance affected its materialization process. Everything they'd prepared for came down to this moment. All ships, she ordered, prepare for dimensional shift. Let's show these ancient nightmares what happens when you give humanity time to get creative. The universe seemed to hold its breath as the combined human Confederation fleet executed Commander Chen's desperate plan. The Hyperion led the charge, its modified quantum drive screaming as it channeled enough energy to tear a hole in reality itself. Behind it, hundreds of ships followed in perfect formation, their crystalline crew members glowing with channeled power. Quantum resonance at maximum. Dr. Patel's voice was barely audible over the ship's groaning hull. Hull integrity failing. We can't maintain this level of energy much longer. Commander Chen stood steady at her post, watching as space itself began to ripple around them. The massive Void Hunter command ship loomed ahead, its surface writhing with evolved weapons and defenses. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the ancient enemy showed signs of confusion. They're trying to adapt, reported Arkstil, their crystalline form blazing with energy. But their algorithms can't predict what we're doing because we're not actually attacking them. That's right. Chen allowed herself a grim smile. You can't evolve a defense against a change in the rules themselves. Admiral Zyktal, are your people ready? The High Admiral's voice came through strained but determined. All crystalline beings are in resonance, Commander. Though I must admit, this is not how I expected to spend my day when I woke up this morning. Void Hunter command ship is attempting emergency dimensional shift. Lieutenant Park shouted. They're trying to retreat back into null space. Not this time. Chen's eyes hardened. All ships, execute final phase. Dr. Patel, make us some tea. The Hyperion's quantum drive reached frequencies that shouldn't have been possible as Dr. Patel initiated the final sequence. Throughout the fleet, crystalline beings channeled their energy in perfect synchronization, creating a cascade effect that rippled through space-time itself. The principle was simple. Just as hot water changed the fundamental structure of tea leaves, their combined energy would change the fundamental structure of space around the Void Hunters. The enemy command ship, caught between dimensions, began to shudder as conflicting physics tried to tear it apart. Its adaptive algorithms worked frantically to counter the effect, but there was nothing to adapt to. The humans and their allies weren't attacking the ship itself, but rather the space it was trying to exist in. Energy cascade reaching critical mass. Dr. Patel warned, "We're about to." The universe went white. When vision returned seconds later, the scene had changed dramatically. Where the Void Hunter command ship had been, there was now a swirling vortex of quantum energy, its edges crackling with dimensional instability. "Status report," Chen demanded, pulling herself up from where the final surge had thrown her. The enemy command ship. First Officer Mira's holographic form flickered as she reported from the station. "It's trapped, Commander. The quantum resonance has created a permanent dimensional interference pattern. They can't fully materialize in normal space, but they can't retreat to null space either. Their entire fleet is affected." Admiral Zuchtal added, his crystalline form dimmed from the energy expenditure. "The resonance cascade has created a quantum barrier around this entire sector of space. The Void Hunters are cut off from their dimensional shortcuts." Chen watched as the remaining enemy vessels, their adaptive algorithms finally overwhelmed, began to drift powerless in space. Without their connection to null space, without their ability to evolve new defenses on the fly, they were just ships. Advanced, dangerous, but no longer invincible. "All ships, target the remaining hostile vessels," she ordered. "Standard weapons only. Let's not push our luck with any more physics experiments today." The combined fleet made short work of the stranded Void Hunters. As the last enemy ship disappeared in a flash of conventional weapons fire, a strange silence fell over the command channel. "Well," Admiral Zuchtal was the first to speak, "I believe this is what humans call a game changer." Chen nodded, allowing herself to relax slightly. "The Void Hunters spent 50,000 years learning to counter our weapons, our strategies, our traditional tactics. But they never considered that we'd figure out how to change the basic rules of the game. By using crystalline beings as quantum amplifiers, combined with your modified drive technology," Mira's brain matter pulsed with scientific excitement, "you essentially created a permanent dimensional barrier. One that requires both human and Confederation technology to maintain. Almost like we're better off working together." Chen smiled. "Admiral, I believe we have some treaties to rewrite." The next few hours were a blur of activity as damage reports came in, rescue operations began, and the combined fleet secured the sector. The quantum barrier would need to be maintained and studied, the remaining Void Hunter forces would need to be hunted down, and 1,000 other tasks awaited. But as Commander Sarah Chen stood on the Hyperion's observation deck, watching human and Confederation ships working side by side to clean up the aftermath of battle, she felt a sense of hope. The ancient enemy had returned expecting to find the same divided galaxy they'd nearly conquered 50,000 years ago. Instead, they'd found something new. Proof that sometimes the best weapon against evolution was revolution. "Commander," Lieutenant Park's voice came over the comm, "the Confederation Council is requesting your presence. Something about discussing permanent joint fleet operations." Chen smiled as she watched a crystalline repair crew coordinating with human engineers to fix a damaged cruiser. The Void Hunters had spent 50 millennia preparing to fight the last war. They hadn't counted on humanity's gift for changing the rules, or on the fact that sometimes the best way to win wasn't to play the game better, but to flip the board entirely. "Tell them I'll be right there," she replied. "And have Dr. Paddle bring some of that Centaurian brandy. I think we all deserve a drink after saving the galaxy with T-physics." High above, the quantum barrier shimmered with combined human and Confederation energy, a permanent reminder that the greatest victories often come not from fighting alone, but from learning to work together. The galaxy would never be quite the same, and that perhaps was the greatest victory of all.